This in-box Commodore 64 was sent to me for repair. Customer stated that there's no video output and is hoping that I can fix it. This is my first time working on one of these, and it's actually the oldest thing I've ever worked on to date. It was released back in 1982, and by the time it had finished its run, it broke the world record for highest selling single model computer, with sales estimated to be as high as 17 million units sold. The name came from an amalgamation of the company that sold it, Commodore International, as well as it being 64 kilobytes of RAM. These systems were a huge stepping stone in modern video games and are still adored by thousands today. So I'm really hoping I can bring this one back to life so it can relive its glory days. This thing is pristine. It's almost like I've traveled back to 1982 and I've just unboxed it. This thing is basically your Xbox's great-great-great-great-grandfather. And it has the super heavy power adapter to prove it. This thing is close to 3 pounds. And to put that into perspective, that's about 3.5 Nintendo Switches. And just as the customer said, there's no picture. He tried it back home with a Commodore screen and it still didn't work, so it's gotta be an internal issue. These are incredibly easy to open up. It was just 4 screws and then a couple wires to completely remove the top. Now just take a minute to truly appreciate everything that's going on inside of this. It's crazy to think how much technology has evolved in the last 40 years. Now I'm not gonna lie, this was extremely intimidating when I opened it up. Everything in this was foreign to me, however, I was able to tell that the fuse was still good, and that this had some servicing back in October of 1988. I wasn't even a thought back then. Now thankfully I have made some friends along the way that have worked on these systems before and know a lot more on them than me. Case in point would be my friend Stunner over on TikTok, where the only thing that rivals his knowledge is his cinematography. Stunner explained to me that sometimes a no video can be caused by faulty CIAs or PLAs, don't ask me what those stand for, so he suggested removing them. Unfortunately, with this version of board, I couldn't easily remove the CIAs, but I was able to pull the PLA out and nothing happened. While we're here, consider subscribing. So it was time to bring out the big guns. I cracked out the oscilloscope and now I'm going to start probing around to see if I can figure out what's up. Now there is definitely a skill and a talent to using one of these things properly. Unfortunately, I don't have either of those. But what I did happen to have was a handy guide telling me what value should be where, so I was able to test my board and compare it to the correct value. I spent a good deal of time checking the VIC as well as the CPU, and I think I've narrowed it down. Everything seems to be pointing towards the CPU, and when I did a quick temperature test on all the chips, I found that the CPU was actually quite hot and nearly burnt my finger. Now I did check with my thermal cam and everything seemed to be the same temperature, however that touch test really proved that CPU is getting hot. So I've been following a guide and probing around the oscilloscope, and I found that CPU specific signals just aren't there. I'm getting voltage, but I'm not getting an actual signal. That, with the CPU being so hot, I believe that is my issue. Unfortunately, that's a common issue with these systems, so hopefully I can find a replacement. So I reached out to the customer and I explained that I believe it's the CPU and the replacement would cost, I think it was about $50 or so. But the only issue was I wasn't 100% positive, and I warned that this might end up being a wild goose chase, because if the CPU doesn't work, then we're gonna have to find out what it is, and we might just end up replacing chips, which could get rather expensive. Unfortunately, at this time, I don't have those spare chips in my shop that I can easily just swap out and find out exactly what's wrong. So with that, the customer decided not to move forward with the repair, just in case it did end up being a wild goose chase. If you've been following my channel for any time here on YouTube or TikTok, you'll know that if there's no repair, there's no charge. So all of that diagnostic work there was absolutely free. I gave it a quick cleaning as well and shipped it back to the customer. So unfortunately, this one wasn't a repair. It's gonna bother me forever. Hopefully one day I have the resources here in my shop that I can again accept that system and fix it for them properly. Let's save the consoles, or at least try to. As always, I'm not formally trained in any of this, so I encourage everybody to learn with me, but please don't imitate me without first doing your own research. Just in case I did make a mistake somewhere, I don't want you to make the same mistake.